Unfortunately, it took 150 games to get there, but the Giants are playing playoff caliber baseball, and they just put a serious hurting on the Kansas City Royals playoff odds with some nice developments for some young pitchers.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And coming up on today's show, like I said, it took them 150 games to get there, but the San Francisco Giants are finally playing some playoff caliber baseball. And to me, one of the things I'm going to point out today is that a lot of this has to do with pitching. Like the Giants allowed 1 run in this series. Okay. So like in 2 of their wins, they scored only 2 runs. And so that was missing for the entire season. I kept pointing out that the offense for the first 3-4 months of the season was actually fine, and the pitching was not. The run prevention was not, and their defense wasn't bad. So it was really like a pitching issue. But lately it's been more of a hitting issue, and so it's kind of reversed. But at the same time, it was really nice to see a couple of young pitchers, and we'll get into this later, in Mason Black and Landen Roupp have just kind of big steps forward, especially in the case of Roupp, who's now had 3 straight excellent outings. But for the Giants, this is all that they can really play for at this point, is development of players who factor into their future. And by development, I also just mean seeing what you have, evaluation, and also trying to hurt other teams. And right now, they did that. Mission accomplished with the Kansas City Royals. They did take 2 out of 3 from the Orioles, but according to FanGraphs, the Orioles playoff odds as of today, 99.9%. So that didn't, it hurt their losing 2 out of 3 certainly hurt their odds of winning the division. They're 6 back with 6 to play. So I don't know about the tiebreaker, but I don't think the Yankees have clinched the division yet. But still, Orioles will not be winning that division. But for the Royals, let me just tell you, just because, like I said in the last episode, this is, as a competitor, myself and obviously the players are all competitors. A lot of you listening are competitive. Just being a fan of sports, it's all about competition to me. And if you look at the Kansas City Royals playoff odds entering this series against the Giants, they sat at 90.8% according to FanGraphs. And after the Giants left town, the Royals playoff odds are at 67.8%. And so a significant drop indeed. What is that? 22 percentage points? Yeah, 22 percentage point drop. So they went from, 9 out of 10 or a little more than that chances to about 2 and 3 chances, just because the Giants did what they did and other teams around the Royals did what they did. But, the sweep, the Royals have lost 7 in a row. I think it's 7 at this point. I know this is a Giants show, but it was the Giants that did this. And so now you have a chance to go into Arizona and do the same. I mean, just mess things up a little bit. Right now, the Diamondbacks are playing for a couple things. Number one, to clinch a spot in the postseason, which they haven't done yet. They have a 2-game lead over the Atlanta Braves. Everybody else, there's basically there's one team that's yet to be eliminated. Otherwise, we have our National League playoff picture: the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Brewers, and then basically the Padres, Diamondbacks, Mets, and Braves are duking it out for 3 spots. So 4 teams for 3 spots. And right now the Braves and Mets are playing head to head. So that's going to go an extremely long way towards determining which of those teams, like if the Mets can win 2 out of 3 or sweep, then it's over. Well, if they win 2 out of 3, they'd be 3. I think the Mets would be 3 up with 3 to play. So that would be tough for the Braves. So, but the Giants, the Diamondbacks are tied with the Mets. And so if the Braves can win this series or sweep it against the Mets, the Giants have a chance to also do some damage against the Diamondbacks. And so the Diamondbacks playoff odds entering today, according to FanGraphs, are 82.9%. And so a very good chance. And actually, if the Diamondbacks play well in this series, we could witness them clinching a playoff berth in the series. And they're already, I believe, they're 6 back with 6 to play in the division. And so very good chance they get eliminated from the division during this series, because if the Dodgers can just win a single game, then that would eliminate Arizona. So they would do their, champagne and all that stuff if they can clinch a playoff spot, because, sometimes teams don't do the celebration if they're still in play for the division, if they just clinch a playoff berth. But Arizona, they're not going to win the division. They're 6 back, like I said, with 6 to play. So if you're the Giants, again, that competitive edge is like, I don't want to witness this team in my division with some players that were on your team last year, including like Jock Peterson. He may be the only one, but I don't want to see these guys, celebrating on the field especially with a win. Maybe if they go through the back door and some other team loses and it gets them in, I don't know. That's just there's only 6 games left. The St. Louis Cardinals are the Giants' last series of the year. That the Cardinals are eliminated from playoff contention, as are the Giants. So that is essentially a meaningless series when it comes to the postseason. So this is it for the Giants. And it's worth pointing out, like I said, they're playing their best baseball right now. Literally, it took 150 games, and then they've played 156, but they're 5-1 in their last 6. They really could have swept the Orioles as well. They had a lead in that series. They had Logan Webb on the mound. It was tied in the 9th, and Ryan Walker, 2 outs, I think 2 strikes, and gave up a home run with the Orioles walking it off. But, Andrew Baggerly with a tweet, I just must say, he said, the Giants just swept their first road series since July, with a fireworks emoji. And then he did like ... line break, ... line break, ... line break of 2023. So I did not know that. They had not swept a road series since July of 2023. That's the kind of thing you look at and say, well, there's why they're not making the playoffs. Like they never went on a run. They never went on like a super hot streak. And overall, though, their road record has become respectable-ish at 36-42. But they haven't dominated enough at home. So there they stand, 2 games under 500, still a chance to finish at or above 500 for the Giants. So to me, again, I want to see them play good baseball. I don't care. I don't want to see them, try to get better odds in the draft lottery to get a better draft pick. I'm not about that. Just play good baseball, and it's good to see. And it's especially good to see when it's involving players who figure into their future. So we'll get into what I mean by that. Mason Black, Landen Roupp, and also Blake Snell. and what they did in this series against the Royals. We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today and explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. And with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival's city during the postseason. Or maybe you just want to travel to a postseason game not involving your rival. And that is actually something I am going to do. I'm not going to, it's a secret where I'm going, but Booking.com makes the whole experience so great and can make me a fan and will make me a fan of any U.S. city, no matter what team you're rooting for this postseason. From hotels that look out over stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, I should say, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. And checking out FanDuel.com as we speak, you can check out 49ers odds ahead of time. You can check out the Giants in Arizona with Hayden Birdsong on the mound against Eduardo Rodriguez. Giants are heavy underdogs in this series with a money line at plus 146. I don't know. Eduardo Rodriguez, he had a good outing his last time out, but he also has gotten roughed up a bit this year. The over-under set at 8.5 with the over at minus 122. I don't know. I feel that the Giants, maybe the way they're playing at the money line, that could be potentially a good value. So visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, here we go. We're going to get into some pitchers impressing and looking like future pieces in the rotation. I mean, the way that Landen Roupp is throwing the ball right now, it's crazy. He started off the year poorly, and all of a sudden I'm talking about him as a legitimate kind of candidate for the rotation next year, and that he's had a breakout season. Like, that's how good he's been since he got recalled. I think it was in August. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down, there's only 6 games left, so let's enjoy them. The Giants are eliminated, and all that you can do is just hope to see them play some good ball. And we'll be breaking it down. Like I said, Birdsong against Eduardo Rodriguez. Birdsong with his 4.74 ERA. That's better than Eduardo Rodriguez's ERA. So, again, trying to play spoiler, and we'll be breaking that one down tomorrow. And so, yeah, the Giants, specifically, let's talk about Saturday, when they won 9-0. 2 straight series where they had just a dominant blowout win, which has brought their run differential to a respectable -7. I mean, yeah, it's not good enough, but I get a lot of comments all season long like the Giants are horrible. Well, no, they're more mediocre, which is a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but they're one win away from having had a 500 record. If they had won one more game to this point, they'd be 78-78. And they've done this all year, where they've fallen below 500 by 6 games, and then they've come all the way back, and then they fall back again. Very frustrating, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it is nice to see them finishing strong. And there was reporting from the San Francisco Chronicle that the Giants board of directors wanted to see how the team finished before making a decision on Farhan Zaidi. I know this is going to tick some people off because a lot of people want to see Zaidi fired. And so if maybe you're rooting against the Giants for these last 6 games, I don't know. I never do that, no matter what. Maybe the last game of 2017, when if they had lost, they would have the number 1 pick in the draft. But with the win, they had the number 2 pick in the draft. It was a totally meaningless game. So that maybe, and these days though, it's a draft lottery, so it's not the same kind of setup. So that shouldn't be a factor. But anyway, getting to the pitchers, I think that Landen Roupp is worth talking about. So he has made 3 consecutive starts, his first 3 starts of his major league career. And what has he done in these starts? Well, all he's done is pitch 5 innings in each of them, 2 runs in the first one, 0 in the second, and 0 in the third against the 2 teams that are almost okay. The Brewers have already clinched a playoff spot. He threw 5 innings, 2 runs against them. The Padres are like right on the verge of clinching a playoff spot. He went 5 shutout innings against them. The Royals, even though the Giants did a number on their playoff odds, are still 67% likely to make the postseason. And so that's 3 playoff teams, essentially. 15 innings, 2 runs allowed. And a 1.20 ERA is what that is. A 2.83 fielding independent pitching. Now, we're talking small samples here. I don't like to talk ERA, fielding independent pitching, in 15 inning samples, but it's just worth pointing out. That's what he's done. And I do just also want to point out, I said this after his last outing, but his curveball grades out as just an elite pitch, and he throws it a lot. It's his primary offering. 44% of the time he throws it, so less than half the time, but more than any other pitch. Throws his sinker 40% of the time, changeup 9% of the time. The sinker also grades out as an above average pitch. This is by this Stuff Plus metric, which is kind of the newish thing, I guess, in baseball. But on the season, counting his struggles early on and counting a bunch of relief appearances, 19, he's got a 2.70 ERA with an expected ERA significantly higher at 3.98, but that's still very respectable. Fielding independent pitching at 3.21. That in large part is driven by his really low home run allowed total, and home run rate takes a very long time to stabilize. He's allowed 1 homer this season in 46 2/3 innings. So you can't really expect that to continue, and fielding independent pitching is heavily influenced by home runs. So I kind of ignore that. I look more, maybe I would put more stock into the expected ERA, but I'd also put more stock into projections and also the quality of that curveball by these kind of metrics these days that can evaluate the quality of pitches. And so Landen Roupp, I'm always pointing this out one way or the other without bias. Like, he was a draft pick by the current Farhan Zaidi-led regime. And if he wasn't, I would say the same thing. I would say he is not a draft, but he was. He was a 2021 12th round pick, so 356th overall pick, and looking like, at the very least, a major league caliber pitcher. When you have an elite pitch like that, I mean, yeah. And so looking forward, especially when we consider Mason Black also had a really nice start. They both, not that the win matters to me at all, it matters to players though, and the team, and they picked up their first career wins in back-to-back games. And so that was cool to see. I did want to point out Landen Roupp is 26 years old. He just turned 26 this month. And Mason Black, I think, is significantly younger at 24. I guess it's not. So he'll be 25 in December. So 26 and 25, that's not really significantly younger. But anyway, Mason Black also had a really nice outing where he went I mean, the Giants just pitched their tails off in the series. Mason Black went 5 2/3, no runs allowed, 4 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. So I said when we looked at the FanDuel odds that I was taking the under on, I think it was 8.5 runs, and that they were underrating Mason Black based on his high ERA on the season. And sure enough, he went out there and pitched a gem, and Michael Wacha pitched well, and the Giants won 2-1. Got very dicey with Camilo Doval. That's a whole separate issue I won't get into. But Doval is like the last person I wanted to see come in there in a 2-0 game in the 9th through 8 straight balls to start the inning. Just very dicey stuff, but he did manage to get out of it. Elliot Ramos had a nice game, 3 for 4 with a single, a double, and a triple. And then it took a diving catch that may have been an inside the park home run, honestly, if that catch wasn't made for a cycle, which would have been really cool. But anyway, so to see young players like Landen, Roupp, Mason Black, Elliot Ramos, and worth pointing out, Elliot Ramos not picked by this current regime. But Mason Black was. He was a 3rd-round pick in 2021. So Roupp and Black both picked in 2021. And for the Giants, you start thinking about next year's rotation, and there's suddenly like this surplus of young pitching, and they're going to have some decisions to make here because you've obviously got Logan Webb. Blake Snell, who I want to talk about in just a minute, had a fabulous outing again. He's just been unstoppable since he came off the injured list for the 2nd time. But then after that, you're looking at Hayden Birdsong, who's shown flashes of brilliance. You're looking at Landen Roupp, who's been really good lately. You're looking at Mason Black, Tristan Beck, who missed so much of the season with that aneurysm repair, but he is a rotation candidate. And then we haven't even mentioned Robbie Ray, who's all but certain, I think, to opt into the 2 years, $50 million left on his contract. And then Kyle Harrison, who didn't have the best year, but is still just 23 years old. Keaton Wynn, who is very much someone they're high on, but had elbow surgery in late July. Jordan Hicks is also, part of this team, although he was shut down with shoulder inflammation is going to miss the rest of the season. And then you've got guys coming like Carson Wisenhunt. And so there's just a huge abundance of pitching. I'm not saying that they're like that all these guys are Cy Young candidates, but they're all guys that you want to keep in mind when you're thinking about your pitching staff moving forward. So coming up in just a minute, I do want to touch on Blake Snell and just what he's been able to do here with the Giants since that second IL stint, and also Marco Luciano and Luis Matos optioned again, and Marco Luciano going to transition to the outfield. Breaking news here. So we'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by our good friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, yours truly included. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is available to play, yes, that's right, in the great state of California. I have had a ton of fun all season long. I've read you my picks many times. I've had success and a lot of positive plays on Prize Picks, to put it that way. And so you can play as well. Only 6 games left. Download the Prize Picks app today. But there's other sports too. But for baseball, only 6 games left. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase by the way, on Prize Picks, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, here we go. We are going to get into Blake Snell and Marco Luciano. So I just have to, I can't not mention what Blake Snell is doing. He basically did this last year too. He had a rough start to the season with the Padres, and then he ended up winning the Cy Young Award in a total landslide, where it was just clear that he should win it. And that's kind of what we've seen this year. It's different in that it took him longer because he was on the IL. I don't think he was on the IL at all last year, but he came back off the IL on July 9th, and he's made over that time 14 starts, 80 and a third innings, and over that time he has a 1.23 ERA in 14 starts, 80 and a third innings. And fielding independent pitching, you might ask, 1.77 over that span. It's just unbelievable. Like, every single number I look at is just unbelievable. Like, he's just been absolutely dominant, the best pitcher going since that time. And I talked about this a lot. Because before that, before July 9th, he had a 9.51 ERA. And I was saying, this is not what you're going to see. You're going to see, he's going to be Blake Snell. And boy, has he ever. And so the fact that he's already on your team, the fact that he said he's enjoyed it here, the Giants, despite all that young pitching, like, to have a guy like this where basically you're going to win every time he goes out there and he's just going to dominate is very attractive when you're trying to build a winning team. To have Webb and Snell like locked up would just be a great thing for this team. I think the downside is the age. He's going to turn 32 on December 4th. It's probably like during the winter meetings, which it could be when he signs a deal. And that scares me, the age. You've also got Corbin Burns, a California native from Bakersfield, went to St. Mary's as a free agent this offseason. But yeah, the Giants have all this young pitching, but also they're going to probably finish below 500. They're definitely going to not make the playoffs, and they already had Blake Snell. So if you lose Blake Snell and you're just like, oh, we're going to create all these spots for young pitchers, it's hard to expect that you're going to have a much better year in 2025. Excuse me, my voice. So my point is, lock this guy up to a long-term deal. I don't care. I don't care about the risk. They've been too risk-averse, and this guy's just been awesome. You got Logan Webb like publicly basically saying that he's going to do everything he can to advocate to the front office to bring him back. And Farhan Zaidi, like, what does he have to lose? It's not his money, and he probably, if he doesn't re-sign a Blake Snell, he's not going to be around. And so it's a more of an ownership thing. It's a, does Snell want to be here thing? So just wanted to give a shout out to how amazing Snell has been and what a season. It's, his season numbers now, a 3.12 ERA, 2.54 expected ERA, 2.43 fielding independent pitching in 104 innings. And the thinking behind, it was 2 groin injuries. It wasn't like arm injuries. And so the thinking is that he just wasn't ready to start the season. And so think of the season he may have had if they had just signed him earlier. So just like they did with Chapman, try to get a deal done before every team can get their hands on this guy in free agency. Lastly, I just want to mention there was, the Giants optioned Marco Luciano. And again, and so it's been ugly defensively. And this was a article from Maria Guardado, who said that the Giants are going to start getting Luciano some work in the outfield. She wrote this after they had optioned him. So there were only 2 games left on Sacramento's schedule at the time, so he was actually going to head to the Giants player development complex in Arizona at Papago and start getting some looks in the outfield, which most scouts believe will be the best defensive fit for him in the long run. And Bob Melvin said he's open to it. Maybe it increases a little versatility for him. It takes a little pressure off him too, because he was having problems defensively. And so Melvin said when you get off to a rough start defensively, it can filter into your entire game, and maybe it has some we'll kind of see how it goes. You gain confidence, you swing the bat, you're in a different position. I think anything is on the table for him. And Melvin said his attitude has been great. He's been great with me. Every time I've had to talk to him in situations like today, meaning to option him, he's all in on whatever we want to do. That part I appreciate. Has it been tough on him? Sure. This is the big leagues. Casey Schmidt performed well when he was here. You have to reward that too. And so they're kind of justifying the option move there. But yeah, it's been really rough looking whether at short or at second. And so, yeah, what's long been believed to be inevitable is finally happening. But then you look at the Giants outfield moving forward, and you've got Jung-Hoo Lee, you've got Elliot Ramos, you've got a decision to make on Mike Yastrzemski entering his last arbitration year, and you've got the need to upgrade. And Juan Soto is out there. I know. You don't want to hear about Juan Soto, but I would imagine it's going to be the same deal where they do try to pursue this guy heavily and then end up not getting him. That would be my guess. But nonetheless, Marco Luciano's future with the Giants very much uncertain, although he does have another option year remaining. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down Game 1 in Arizona. This is the last series where the Giants have something to play for when it comes to the game itself and winning and losing. Well, I guess you also want to finish above 500 in my opinion. So they've got some things to play for, and we'll be breaking it down. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.